My name is Jillian Henderson. I'm 29 years old. There are moments in life that don't announce themselves as turning points. They arrive disguised as casual conversations, half-heard remarks, harmless scrolls through social media. And then, without warning, they split something open inside you. So, how was the retreat? My friend Tessa asked, swirling her margarita like she was asking about the weather. I blinked. The what? She laughed softly, confused. Your family's retreat. Your sister posted about it. It looked intense, in a good way. My stomach dropped, but my face didn't move. Years of practice will do that to you. Oh, I said lightly. That one. Yeah, I wasn't there. Tessa frowned and pulled out her phone. Wait, what? She turned the screen toward me. The photo was taken from above, clearly a drone shot. A massive lakeside lodge tucked against the Pocono Mountains. 150 people arranged in neat rows, all wearing coordinated navy and white. A banner stretched across the middle. Henderson Family Reunion, 2025. I recognized every face. My parents stood front and center, smiling like campaign posters. My siblings, Trevor, Vanessa, Austin, Brittany, Cameron, and Zoe, lined up around them with their partners and children, cousins, in-laws, family friends, people I barely remembered. Everyone except me. Oh, I said again, forcing a smile. Yeah, there wasn't enough space. Tessa stared at the photo. Jill, there are like 100 people. I shrugged and took a sip of my drink. Lodges fill up fast. She opened her mouth to say something else, then closed it. I waved it off like it didn't matter, like it hadn't hollowed something out of my chest. The dinner party continued. Someone laughed too loudly. Someone debated Peloton stats. Someone argued about Disney Plus passwords. I nodded, smiled, reacted at the right beats. Inside, my heart was sprinting in tight circles. 15 minutes later, I excused myself and locked myself in the bathroom. The light buzzed overhead. The room smelled like vanilla soap and coconut shampoo. I sat on the edge of the tub and opened my phone. Instagram. Dozens of photos. Lakeside brunches with matching mugs. Campfire nights with custom hoodies. My brothers holding toddlers in tiny reunion t-shirts. My sisters in coordinated sundresses with reunion crew hats. One photo stopped me cold. My parents slow dancing under Edison bulbs, smiling like nothing in the world had ever been wrong. Someone had planned this. There was a spreadsheet, a shared Pinterest board. This wasn't spontaneous. And then I remembered the phone call. A few weeks earlier, I'd asked my mom casually, "Hey, are we doing anything this year for the reunion?" She'd sounded rushed. "We're keeping it small. Not enough space for everyone." Not enough space. I'd accepted that answer without question. I always did. I'd learned early not to push, not to ask follow-ups, not to make myself inconvenient. I scrolled back to the group photo. My absence glared back at me like a missing tooth in a perfect smile. And the worst part? This wasn't new. At 9, there was a graduation party that got too full before I arrived. At 14, a ski trip I found out about through photos. Once I helped assemble welcome baskets for a reunion I wasn't invited to. I wiped my eyes quickly as tears slipped out. Quiet, controlled, efficient. Not dramatic enough to be noticed. There was a knock. "You okay?" Tessa asked softly. "Yeah," I said, clearing my throat. "Stomach thing." I stared at myself in the mirror afterward. Mascara smudged just slightly. Blank expression. Not angry, not sad. Just erased. I fixed my face, pulled my shoulders back, and walked out like nothing had happened. But something had shifted. I didn't know it yet, but I was 24 hours away from doing something that would change everything. Loneliness, I learned, isn't about being alone. It's about being surrounded by people who don't see you. I'm number 4 out of 7. Not the middle child. The forgotten one. And that realization, that was only the beginning. I grew up in a house where silence was suspicious and attention was currency. The Hendersons were loud, musical, competitive in a way that was always framed as love. Family dinners weren't meals so much as performances. Someone always had a guitar. Someone else harmonized without being asked. Birthdays turned into concerts. Holidays became full productions, recorded and uploaded to YouTube with titles like Henderson Holiday Spectacular or Summer Jam Session. 3 of my siblings built actual careers in music. I did not. For a long time, I didn't know I was bad at it. I sang in the shower. I hummed in the car. I assumed I was normal. Then I turned 8. We were singing Happy Birthday for one of my cousins, and I joined in, loud and proud, trying to match the enthusiasm in the room. Halfway through the song, my older sister Vanessa winced. Not subtly, like she'd just stepped on glass. "Jillian, please," she said, "you're flattening everything." I didn't know what that meant, but the laughter that followed explained it well enough. From then on, it became a thing. Jillian the noise polluter. Jillian the tone assassin. Jillian, please mouth the words. Once, my brother Trevor made a chart ranking all 7 siblings by musical ability. He taped it to the fridge. I wasn't on it. Underneath, he'd written, "Some things can't be measured." Everyone laughed, even my parents. I learned quickly. Don't sing. Don't stand too close to the microphones. Don't volunteer for solos. Be helpful instead. Hold coats. Pass out programs. Clap enthusiastically. So I tried humor. I thought maybe if I couldn't sing, I could at least be funny. I made observations, dry comments, little side remarks meant to land quietly. They didn't. My family liked big reactions, slapstick, obvious punchlines. My jokes floated in the air and dropped dead on the floor. They named that too, a Jillian joke. It meant a joke no one laughed at. They used it casually, even when I wasn't there. "That was such a Jillian joke," someone would say, and the room would erupt. Once, I asked my mom if she thought I was funny. She smiled at me, the way you smile at a child who asks if unicorns are real. "You're clever," she said, "but you're not exactly entertaining." That was the moment I stopped trying. At school, I tested my humor with friends, but I always pulled back before the punchline, afraid of the silence. I learned to be agreeable, pleasant, easy to overlook. That worked better. Years passed. I grew up, moved out, built a life that didn't revolve around family performances, and somewhere along the way, I started writing things down. Not jokes exactly, observations, awkward moments, things that made me laugh quietly to myself. I didn't think I was funny. I thought I was coping. Then one night, on a whim, I went to an open mic at a dive bar called the Rusty Tap. The lighting was terrible. The mic crackled if you breathed too hard. The crowd smelled like cheap beer and disappointment. I signed up anyway. My hands shook so badly I thought I might drop the mic. But when I started talking, something strange happened. They laughed. Not polite laughter, not pity laughter. Real laughter, surprised laughter. I walked off stage dizzy, addicted. I kept going back. Once a week, then twice. I refined my sets, learned timing, learned when to pause, learned when to let silence work for me instead of against me. It took months before I told my family. By then, I'd been performing regularly. Nothing viral, nothing big, but real people, real laughs. We were sitting around after Thanksgiving dinner when I finally mentioned it. "So," I said, clearing my throat, "I've been doing stand-up comedy." The room went quiet. "Like performing?" Brittany asked, smirking. "Yeah, at a club downtown." Austin laughed. "You? On stage?" "Well, it's not Madison Square Garden," I said, "but yes, a stage." They laughed again, not cruelly, just dismissively. "You've never been funny," my mom said gently, "but that's sweet. It's good to have hobbies." I wanted to believe it was just surprise, that once they saw me perform, they'd understand, maybe even be proud. So I invited them. I picked a good show. Saturday night, decent turnout, supportive crowd. I got there early and saved seats in the 3rd row. I kept glancing at the door as people filtered in. A couple from my last set waved. Someone complimented my earrings. The room filled. The host called my name. No one from my family was there. I scanned the room one last time before stepping on stage. The empty seats stared back at me. It didn't hit like a punch. It hit like a vacuum, like all the air in the room suddenly left. But I smiled. I opened with a throwaway line, got a laugh, found my rhythm. I crushed it. After the show, people came up to me. One said she hadn't laughed like that in months. Another asked where they could find me online. I should have felt proud. Instead, all I could think about was the empty seat I'd saved for my mom. After that, I stopped inviting them, not out of spite, out of self-preservation. They never asked about it. Occasionally, someone would mention a cousin's tour or a new album release, and someone would say, "Jillian's got her little comedy thing," like I was knitting sweaters for squirrels. I still smiled, still nodded, but something inside me hardened. I stopped hoping. And then came the reunion. The 150 people. The one I wasn't invited to. That was the moment something finally snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just cleanly. I didn't plan what happened next. I didn't script it. I went home, opened my laptop, and stared at a blinking cursor for 20 minutes. Then I wrote something honest. And the next night, I took it on stage. The night after I found out about the reunion, I didn't sleep. I lay on my couch with my laptop open, the glow of the screen casting soft shadows on the walls, the cursor blinking like it was daring me to say something. I kept typing a sentence, deleting it, typing another, closing the laptop, opening it again. This wasn't my usual material. Normally, my sets were observational, dating apps, awkward social norms, why almond milk tastes like sadness with commitment issues, safe jokes, jokes that didn't leave bruises. What I was writing now wasn't safe. It wasn't even funny, at least not in the way comedy was supposed to be. It was raw, messy, too close to the bone. By the time the sun came up, my notes app was full of fragments. Most comedians get into comedy because their families laughed at their jokes. Mine didn't. They named the silence. I almost didn't go to the show that night. I told myself I could stick to my usual set. No one would know the difference. No one was forcing me to say anything. But once the thought was there, it wouldn't leave me alone. The rusty tap smelled the same as always. Beer, sweat, old wood soaked in years of spilled drinks. The crowd was decent. Not packed, but lively. A few familiar faces nodded at me. I sat at the back, flipping through my notes, my heart thudding so loudly I was convinced people could hear it. When the host called my name, I stood up without my notebook. That should have been my sign to stop. I walked onto the stage anyway. The lights were harsher than I remembered. The mic felt heavier in my hand. "Hey," I said, and the room quieted. So, most comedians get into stand-up because their families laughed at their jokes. A few chuckles. I got into comedy because mine didn't, like, at all. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not huge yet, curious. They actually created a category for it, a Jillian joke. You know, like a dad joke, but meaner and apparently hereditary. That got a bigger laugh. I felt it in my chest, loosening something tight. In my house, telling a bad joke wasn't just a flop, it was a scandal. I should have had my own documentary, The Girl Who Wasn't Funny. Applause. I kept going. I talked about my siblings, all musically gifted, rhythm in their blood, and how even the toddlers could clap on beat. How I was basically the designated audience member, the family hype woman without the hype. Then I paused. And last week, I said, my parents told me there wasn't enough space for me at the annual family reunion. The room went still. They invited 150 people. The reaction was instant. A full gasp, my favorite sound. Shock mixed with disbelief. I let it hang there. So yeah, I added softly, I guess there wasn't enough space. Not at the lodge, just in their idea of who belongs. The applause was loud, longer than anything I'd ever gotten before. I walked off stage shaking, not from fear, but from release, like I'd pulled a splinter out that had been festering for years. It hurt, but I could breathe. The next morning, at 7:03 a.m., my phone rang. My mother's name lit up the screen. I let it ring. It rang again, and again. On the fifth call, I answered. She didn't say hello. "How dare you," she snapped. "Someone saw your little show." I sat up slowly. "Hi, Mom." "You humiliated us," she continued. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "It was a 10-minute set," I said. "I didn't name anyone." "You didn't have to," she hissed. "Everyone knows who we are. Your siblings have reputations, careers. You're dragging us through the mud because you didn't get your way." "You mean because I wasn't invited?" I said calmly. "Or are we still pretending that didn't happen?" Silence. "Do you know what your brother said?" she went on. "He thinks he might lose a booking over this. Vanessa is mortified. People are calling her fake online." "So," I said slowly, "people believed me." She hung up. I stared at the phone for a long moment. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I felt cold, like something important had finally crystallized. By lunchtime, the family group chats exploded. Vanessa sent a novel-length message about how she'd always supported me. Austin sent a voice memo that sounded like a corporate apology drafted by someone who hated accountability. "I just think it's really toxic to turn family stuff into your brand," he said. "You've always struggled with boundaries." Boundaries. Like the boundary where I wasn't allowed at a reunion with 150 people. Cousins chimed in. Aunts said they were praying for me. Someone suggested it was all a misunderstanding. No one said sorry. No one asked how I felt. They weren't asking for clarity. They were asking me to shrink back into the role I'd played my whole life, the quiet one, the one who takes the hit and keeps the peace. That night, instead of responding, I set up my phone on my coffee table and hit record. I sat on my couch in a hoodie, holding a mug of tea I wasn't drinking. "Hi," I said to the camera. Apparently, some people are upset about my last set. I took a breath. "If your family tells you your jokes aren't funny for 20 years, I continued, and then one night hundreds of strangers laugh until they cry, you're allowed to talk about that. You're allowed to heal however you need to." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't name names. "I used to think I was the least funny person in the world because my family said so," I said. "Turns out, I wasn't unfunny. I just wasn't their kind of funny." I paused, then added quietly, "And if you throw a 150-person reunion and say there's no space for your daughter, maybe don't act shocked when she mentions it." I posted the video and closed my laptop. For the first time in my life, I didn't brace for impact. I just waited. I expected the video to get a few thousand views. Maybe some comments. Maybe a couple of strangers saying they related. I posted it close to midnight, shut my laptop, and went to bed, assuming it would quietly exist on the internet like everything else I'd ever made. Seen by a few, forgotten by most. By the time I woke up, my phone was vibrating itself off the nightstand. Messages, notifications, missed calls. I squinted at the screen. 27 unread texts. Hundreds of comments. A follower count climbing in real time. I refreshed the video. 400,000 views. I sat up too fast and felt dizzy. By noon, it was over 600,000. By dinner, 1 million. Someone had coined a hashtag. Someone else had clipped my line about space and set it to dramatic music. Strangers were stitching the video, nodding, crying, telling their own stories. I read comments until my eyes burned. I thought it was just me. My family did this too. Thank you for saying what I never could. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exposed, like I'd accidentally stepped onto a stage without realizing the spotlight was this bright. That evening, there was a knock on my door. Not a polite knock, a sharp, impatient one. I already knew. I opened the door to find my parents standing on my porch, flanked by Trevor and Vanessa. My dad's face was red. My mom's mouth was a thin line, vibrating with restrained fury. Trevor stood with his arms crossed, like he was posing for a disciplinary brochure. "You need to take it down," my dad said immediately. "No, hello." "I'm not taking it down," I said just as calmly. "You've humiliated this family," my mom snapped. "Do you have any idea what people are saying?" "I didn't make you a joke," I replied. "I just told the truth." Trevor stepped forward. "You can't just post things like that without consequences. It's defamatory." I blinked. "You didn't seem worried about consequences when you didn't show up to my shows." Vanessa scoffed. "That's not the same thing, and you know it." My dad glanced at the neighbor's yard. "Can we come inside and talk about this?" "No," I said. They froze. "And just so you know," I added, lifting my phone slightly, "if anyone starts yelling, I'll film it." My mom gasped, like I'd threatened violence. "You're threatening your own family?" "No," I said. "I'm protecting myself." Trevor muttered something under his breath. I raised my phone. They all took a step back like I'd pulled out a weapon. "We didn't raise you to be like this," my mom said. "You didn't raise me to be honest either," I replied. "You raised me to be quiet." They stood there for a few seconds, stunned. Then my dad said, "We'll be in touch." I closed the door. 3 days later, I got an email. Subject line, "Urgent family concern." It was a cease and desist letter, or at least what Trevor thought was one. Typed in Times New Roman. Strange spacing. Multiple typos. One memorable sentence threatened legal action for deformation. Deformation. I laughed out loud. I didn't respond. I made another video. This one was clearly labeled as satire. I read from a completely fictional cease and desist letter, complete with dramatic music and overly serious delivery. "I have been informed," I said in a monotone voiceover, "that mentioning I was not invited to a family reunion is now a federal crime." Somewhere, I added, the First Amendment is weeping. The fake signature at the bottom read, "Respectfully, Trevor the Enforcer, Esquire." I posted it on a Thursday. By Friday, it had 1.8 million views. Interview requests flooded my inbox. Podcasts, local news, comedy blogs. Everyone wanted a quote, a reaction, a statement. My family imploded. Group chats I'd already muted lit up like Christmas trees. Accusations flew. Someone suggested I was mentally unwell. Another said I was exploiting trauma for clout. No one apologized. Some of my siblings started losing small contracts. Others suddenly found themselves invited onto podcasts titled Raw and Real or Family First to discuss what it's like growing up with someone who thrives on victimhood. They never used my name. They didn't have to. Creators online did what they do best. They investigated. Someone found my mom's public Facebook. Another traced the lodge from a tagged photo. A third showed up at my parents' house asking for comment. 2 weeks later, my parents sold the house. Officially, it was downsizing. Unofficially, they wanted to disappear. One sister deleted all her social media. Another posted a vague note about stepping away from the public eye. And me? I said nothing. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I kept making videos, sketches, observations, stories that weren't directly about them but carried the same honesty. The comments kept coming. Relatable. Thank you. I feel seen. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the punchline. I was the voice. And somewhere in the silence that followed, I realized something important. They were never angry because I lied. They were angry because I stopped protecting their image at the expense of myself. That was the moment I chose not to go back. The silence came first. Not the peaceful kind, not the earned kind, the kind that hums in your ears after something loud finally stops, the kind that makes you flinch every time your phone lights up, even when it's just a delivery notification or a group chat you forgot to mute. I didn't announce that I was going no contact. I didn't send a manifesto. I didn't block anyone in a dramatic sweep. I just stopped responding. I exited the family group chats one by one, archived old photos, unfollowed, then blocked. I locked my Facebook, turned my Instagram private for a while, even scrubbed my Spotify of every shared playlist we'd ever made together, which felt ridiculous and symbolic at the same time. My mom sent one last message before she disappeared from my inbox for good. You've made a laughingstock of your own family. I hope you're proud. I stared at it for a long time before blocking her. I wasn't proud, but I wasn't ashamed either. I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't know I was allowed to set down. The fallout was messy. A few of my siblings who worked in music started losing small contracts. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to rattle them. Apparently, people didn't love being associated with a family suddenly being dissected online. Ironically, that same attention brought invitations, podcasts, panels, discussions about family dynamics in the age of social media. Some of them accepted. I listened to one episode out of morbid curiosity. My brother talked for 45 minutes about how some people just thrive on playing the victim. He never said my name. He didn't have to. I turned it off halfway through and went for a walk instead. Meanwhile, my own life was changing in quieter, steadier ways. The comments under my videos kept coming. People telling me they'd sent my clip to a friend, to a sibling, to a therapist. People saying they'd never heard someone articulate that kind of loneliness before. I thought it was just me. That sentence showed up again and again. Comedy stopped being just something I did at night. I started getting booked more. Better rooms, actual tours. I quit my day job 6 months later with equal parts terror and relief. I was terrified of failing. But I was more terrified of going back to being small. A year passed. I didn't hear from my parents. Not directly. I heard things, of course, through mutual acquaintances, through distant relatives who thought they were being neutral but clearly weren't. They'd moved towns, quietly, downsized. My mom stopped posting entirely. My dad resurfaced once on LinkedIn to congratulate someone on a promotion and then vanished again. One sister deleted everything. Another pivoted hard into wellness content, vague captions about protecting your peace. None of them reached out to say sorry. And maybe that was the final clarity I needed. Because for a long time, even after everything, there was a part of me that thought, if I explain it better, they'll understand. If I soften it, they'll meet me halfway. But they weren't confused. They just didn't want to change. I didn't miss the noise, the constant competition, the unspoken ranking system, the way love always felt conditional, dependent on how well you performed your role. I had real friends now, people who showed up, people who laughed with me, not at me, people who didn't need me to shrink to feel comfortable. After shows, people lined up to talk, not for selfies, for stories. My family did this too. I've never told anyone that before. I thought I was broken. I'd hug them, thank them, tell them the same thing every time. You're not broken. You were just in the wrong room. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the adrenaline from a show has worn off, the doubt creeps in. Did I go too far? Did I burn a bridge that could have been repaired? I let myself sit with those questions now. I don't push them away. I don't answer them immediately either. What I know is this. I told the truth, calmly, without exaggeration. without cruelty. And the people who were hurt weren't hurt because the truth was false. They were hurt because it was visible. I used to think belonging meant endurance. That love was something you earned by being quiet enough, agreeable enough, useful enough. I know better now. Belonging doesn't require self-erasure. And if the only way to stay in a family is to disappear inside it, then leaving isn't betrayal. It's survival. I don't end my shows with a big moral. I don't tell people what to do. I just tell my story and let it land where it lands. Sometimes I end with this. Comedy didn't make me brave. Honesty did. Comedy just gave me a microphone. If you're watching this and wondering whether you're allowed to tell your story too, you are. Even if it makes people uncomfortable. Even if it changes things. Especially if it does. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, you know what to do. For the first time in my life, I wake up excited about what I'm building. Not as the family joke. Just as me.